My name is Ellie Brooks, and at 29, I thought I knew how my family operated. Then my father Walter called, saying he'd booked me a flight home to reconnect with family. After Mom died 3 years ago, we drifted apart, so despite my hectic marketing career in Chicago, I agreed. I landed at Seattle Airport expecting hugs and reminiscing. Instead, my brother Hayden handed me a diaper bag plastered with cartoon dinosaurs. "We're off to Europe," he announced with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just be with them." Before I continue this absolute disaster of a family reunion, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever been blindsided by family. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how I handled being ambushed with childcare duties while my family jetted off to Europe. "What is this?" I asked, holding up the dinosaur-covered diaper bag like it might bite me. The airport terminal buzzed around us, but all I could focus on was my brother's anxious expression and the unexpected weight in my hands. "It's just some supplies for Lily and Lucas," Hayden said, checking his watch for the third time in 30 seconds. "They're with Dad at the curbside pickup. We've got a bit of a situation." Lily and Lucas, my 3-year-old twin niece and nephew. I'd met them exactly 4 times in their short lives, and each occasion had ended with me covered in some bodily fluid I preferred not to remember. "Hayden, slow down. What's going on? Where are you going? And why do I have a diaper bag?" The questions tumbled out as I struggled to make sense of the situation. My brother ran his hand through his hair, a nervous tic he'd had since childhood. "Look, Cassandra and I are separating. It's been a nightmare, but I have the kids for the month while she finds herself, or whatever she's calling it." The bitterness in his voice was unmistakable. "And I have this massive business deal in Europe, 3 cities in 3 weeks. It could save my company, Ellie. I can't pass it up." The pieces started clicking together in my mind. "So Dad called me home to help with the twins while I'm gone," Hayden finished, looking simultaneously guilty and relieved. "Dad and Judith are coming too. It's their second honeymoon or something." My stomach dropped. "You tricked me into coming home to babysit?" Memories of my previous encounters with the twins flashed through my mind. The last time I'd watched them for just 3 hours, Lucas had managed to flush my watch down the toilet while Lily had painted the dog with peanut butter. I was still finding dog hair in my suitcase months later. "Not tricked," Hayden said defensively. "We're reconnecting you with the next generation of the family. Besides, you're great with kids." Before I could argue that point, and I had several counterarguments ready, Dad's SUV pulled up to the curb. He hopped out, his face split in a wide grin that faltered slightly when he saw my expression. "Princess, you made it," he called, using the childhood nickname I'd outgrown 20 years ago. I marched over to him, diaper bag clutched in my white-knuckled grip. "Did you seriously fly me across the country to be an unpaid nanny?" Dad had the decency to look slightly ashamed, but it didn't last long. "Now, Ellie, that's not how family thinks about these things. We help each other out. Remember how I coached your softball team even though I didn't know the first thing about the sport? I was 12, Dad. And you got kicked out of 3 games for arguing with the umpire." He waved this away. "The point is, family steps up. Hayden needs this business deal, and the twins need someone they can trust." He lowered his voice. "And between you and me, this might be exactly what Hayden needs to show Cassandra he's serious about co-parenting. Maybe even save their marriage." I looked into the car window and saw 2 small faces pressed against the glass, small handprints smudging the clean surface. Their identical brown eyes, Hayden's eyes, stared at me with curiosity. Something in my chest tightened. "We'll talk about this at home," I said firmly, climbing into the back seat next to the car seats. "But just so we're clear, I'm not happy about this ambush." As we drove away from the airport, I couldn't help but feel I'd just been manipulated by masters of the craft. The dinosaur diaper bag sat heavily in my lap, a symbol of responsibilities I never asked for and wasn't prepared to handle. Dinner at my childhood home that evening was an exercise in awkward conversation and avoided eye contact. Judith, my father's new wife of 2 years, kept the twins occupied with animal-shaped chicken nuggets while the adults pretended we weren't in the middle of a family crisis. "So," I said, pushing peas around my plate, When exactly were you planning to tell me about this European adventure? Dad exchanged a look with Hayden before answering. We thought it might be better to explain in person. Because you knew I'd say no if you asked over the phone, I translated. Because we knew you'd have concerns we could better address face-to-face, Hayden corrected, though his expression confirmed my version. Judith, ever the peacemaker, jumped in. Walter and I have been planning this trip for months. 10 days in France and Italy. I've always wanted to see the Mediterranean. Her smile was genuine, which made it harder to be angry with her. She hadn't been part of the family manipulation machine for long enough to master it. And my business meetings lined up perfectly, Hayden added. 3 major potential clients in London, Paris, and Berlin. If even one of these deals goes through, my company stays afloat. If all 3 do. He let the sentence hang with uncharacteristic optimism. I turned to face him directly. And Cassandra? She's okay with you taking the twins to Europe. A flash of discomfort crossed his face. Well, technically, she doesn't know about the Europe part yet. She thinks they're staying with me at home. We haven't been on speaking terms lately. Fantastic, I muttered. So I'm not just a babysitter. I'm an accomplice. You're being dramatic, Dad said, dismissing my concerns with a wave of his fork. This is what family does for each other. Your mother would have expected it. The mention of Mom silenced me momentarily. Using her memory as emotional leverage was Dad's nuclear option, and he knew it. Mom had been the glue holding our family together, the one who smoothed over conflicts and reminded us of our obligations to each other. Since her death from cancer 3 years ago, those reminders had become weapons in Dad's arsenal. Don't bring Mom into this, I said quietly. While the adults argued, Lucas launched a spoonful of mashed potatoes across the table, landing a direct hit on Hayden's shirt. Lily, not to be outdone, began smearing ketchup in artistic swirls across her high-chair tray. They're just overtired, Hayden explained, dabbing ineffectually at the stain. Their routine's been disrupted with the packing and everything. That opened another line of questioning. Speaking of routines, what exactly do I need to know about taking care of them? Allergies? Bedtimes? Favorite toys? What followed was a crash course in twin management that made my head spin. Lily was allergic to strawberries, but loved blueberries. Lucas would only wear green socks, not blue ones. Both napped at 1 p.m. sharp, but Lily needed her special blanket while Lucas required exactly 3 books before he'd settle down. Bath time was a 2-person job because Lucas tried to drink the bathwater while Lily had a habit of escaping the tub naked and dripping wet. And whatever you do, Hayden warned, don't let them watch more than 30 minutes of TV per day. Cassandra's really strict about screen time. The same Cassandra who doesn't know her children are effectively being kidnapped to another continent? I asked sweetly. Hayden had the grace to look embarrassed. It's complicated, Ellie. Our marriage has been falling apart for a year. This business deal could change everything, provide stability, show her I can support them properly. I thought about my own life in Chicago. The promotion I was being considered for. The presentation to our biggest client scheduled for next week that I was supposed to lead. The apartment I'd just repainted and furnished exactly how I wanted it. All put on hold because I'd always been the responsible one, the family fixer. After dinner, I escaped to the back porch and called Caitlin, my best friend since college. They did what? She exclaimed after I explained the situation. Ambushed me with childcare duty while they gallivant across Europe, I summarized, keeping my voice low so I wouldn't be overheard. That's insane. You can't do it. Just tell them no and come back to Chicago. I sighed, watching through the window as Dad helped the twins build a tower of blocks. It's not that simple. They've already booked everything. The tickets are non-refundable. So, that's their problem for not consulting you first. She was right, of course. But family guilt is a powerful force. What about the twins? It's not their fault their dad and grandpa are manipulative jerks. Ellie, Caitlin said seriously, you always do this. You put everyone else's needs before your own. What about your job? Your life? After we hung up, I went to my old bedroom, now a guest room with none of my childhood possessions, and opened my laptop. A notification showed I had a new email from Hayden sent 3 weeks ago, accidentally sent to my old email address that I rarely checked. The subject line read, Operation Convince Ellie, Game Plan. My blood boiled as I read through the detailed strategy my father and brother had concocted to ensure I wouldn't refuse their babysitting scheme. They had anticipated my objections, prepared counterarguments, and even decided who would play the mom would have wanted you to help card if necessary. As I closed my laptop, I heard a small whimper from the guest room across the hall where the twins were sleeping. Against my better judgment, I went to check on them. In the dim glow of their dinosaur nightlight, they looked peaceful and innocent, clutching identical stuffed elephants. I was angry at Hayden and Dad, not at these little ones who had no say in any of this. But as I quietly closed their door, my resentment only grew stronger. I was once again cleaning up my family's messes, putting my life on hold while they pursued their own interests. Tomorrow, they would leave for 3 weeks in Europe, and I would be left behind with 2 toddlers I barely knew. The weight of this responsibility settled over me like a heavy blanket, and for the first time in years, I cried myself to sleep in my childhood home. Morning arrived with the subtlety of a freight train, specifically with Lucas jumping on my bed at 5:38 a.m. while shouting pancakes at a volume that should be illegal before sunrise. Lily stood in the doorway, her stuffed elephant dragging on the floor, thumb firmly planted in her mouth. Pancakes happen after Aunt Ellie has coffee, I groaned, prying myself from the warmth of my blankets. The kitchen was chaos as Hayden and Dad rushed to finish packing while Judith made a valiant attempt at organizing the twins' belongings. Their medications are in this bag, Hayden said, shoving a small toiletry case into my hands. Lucas needs his allergy medicine every morning. Lily only takes hers if she starts getting that rash again. What rash? You didn't mention a rash yesterday, I said, trying to keep track of the avalanche of information. It's nothing serious, just some eczema on her elbows. The cream's labeled. Dad was checking his watch every 30 seconds. We need to leave in 20 minutes to make our flight. Wait, we haven't gone through their schedule yet, I protested. Hayden tossed a crumpled piece of paper onto the counter. It's all written down. More or less. I unfolded the paper to find a hastily scrawled list with items like nap time is almost equal to 1 o'clock and Lucas hates carrots, but will eat them if you call them orange power sticks. There were crossed-out sections and coffee stains obscuring crucial information. This is your childcare guide? It looks like a ransom note, I said, waving the paper. You'll figure it out, Dad said with infuriating confidence. You've always been good at managing things. As they continued their frantic preparations, I realized I hadn't even addressed my own situation. By the way, I need to reschedule my return flight, since you've extended my stay by 3 weeks without asking. Hayden had the decency to look slightly guilty. I'll cover the change fee, of course. Just send me the details. And what about my job? I have a presentation next week for our biggest client. Can't you do it remotely? Dad asked, as if this were the simplest solution in the world. Before I could explain the complexities of preparing a major marketing pitch while simultaneously keeping 2 toddlers alive, my phone rang. The screen displayed Margaret Reynolds, my boss. I need to take this, I said, stepping into the hallway. Ellie, I'm looking at the Westford presentation notes, and I'm not seeing the competitive analysis section we discussed, Margaret said without preamble. I'm still working on that part, I replied, watching through the doorway as Lily attempted to feed her breakfast to her stuffed elephant. I'll have it to you by tomorrow. We need it today for the internal review. Is there a problem? I took a deep breath. Actually, I've had a family emergency. I'm in Seattle and... Seattle? The presentation is in 5 days, Ellie. I know, and I'll make it work. A crash from the kitchen interrupted me, followed by Lucas's wail. I'll send the analysis by end of day, I promise. After hanging up, I returned to find orange juice spreading across the kitchen floor and Lucas crying as if the world had ended. Hayden was ineffectually dabbing at his son's soaked pajamas while simultaneously checking flight details on his phone. He wanted to pour his own juice, Hayden explained unnecessarily. By the time we'd cleaned up the mess and changed Lucas into dry clothes, the departure countdown had reached critical levels. We really have to go, Dad announced, checking his watch again. Our flight boards in 90 minutes. The next few minutes were a blur of last-minute instructions and hasty goodbyes. Judith kissed each twin on the forehead, promising to bring back presents. Dad gave me a one-armed hug and whispered, "You're a lifesaver, princess." Hayden knelt in front of his children. "Be good for Aunt Ellie, okay? Daddy will call every day." And then they were gone, leaving me standing in the driveway with a twin clutching each hand, watching the Uber disappear around the corner. "Where'd Daddy go?" Lily asked, her lower lip trembling dangerously. "On a trip," I answered, realizing I had no idea how to explain business meetings and second honeymoons to 3-year-olds. "He'll be back soon." Lucas looked up at me with Hayden's brown eyes. "Pancakes now." That first day set the tone for what would become the most challenging experience of my adult life. After breakfast came the battle of getting them dressed. Lucas insisted on wearing his dinosaur costume over his clothes, followed by a failed attempt at a constructive activity, finger painting that ended with more paint on the furniture than on the paper. By noon, I was already exhausted, and according to Hayden's coffee-stained schedule, we still had bath time, nap time, playground time, and dinner to navigate. Nap time proved particularly challenging when I discovered that Lily's special blanket, apparently essential for sleep, had been left at Cassandra's house. "Pink blankie," Lily wailed, inconsolable despite my offers of substitutes. While trying to calm her, I received a text from Hayden, "Landed in London. All good with the twins." I typed back, "Lily needs her pink blanket. Where's Cassandra's address?" The response came an hour later. "Don't contact Cassandra. Things are tense right now. Just distract Lily with something else." Easy for him to say from thousands of miles away. Meanwhile, Lily had cried herself into an exhausted sleep without her blanket, and Lucas had used the opportunity to empty an entire box of cereal onto the living room floor, declaring it dinosaur food. That evening, after finally getting both children to sleep, I attempted to work on my presentation. 20 minutes in, my laptop battery died, and I realized I'd left my charger in Chicago. I found an old one in Dad's office that sort of fit, but it charged at an agonizingly slow rate. As I waited for enough power to continue working, I wandered into the kitchen for a much-needed glass of wine. The neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, had stopped by earlier with a casserole. I always make extra when I know Walter has the little ones, and during our brief conversation, she'd revealed some interesting details about Hayden and Cassandra's relationship. "Such a shame about their separation," she'd said, shaking her head. "Cassandra tried so hard with those two. I used to see her taking them to the park every morning, rain or shine, while Hayden was always working. But you can't build a marriage when one person is never home." This contradicted Hayden's version of events, which painted Cassandra as flighty and irresponsible. I was beginning to suspect there was much more to this story than my brother had shared. As I sipped my wine, my phone chimed with another text from Hayden. "Meeting went great. Potential client impressed with proposal. How are the kids?" I looked around at the disaster zone that was once my father's tidy kitchen. Cheerios crunched under my feet. Sticky handprints decorated every surface below 3 feet. A plastic dinosaur floated in a half-empty cup of apple juice. "Everything's fine," I typed back, too exhausted to explain the reality. By day 3, I was running on fumes. The twins had developed a tag-team approach to chaos. While I dealt with Lucas flushing action figures down the toilet, Lily would be in the kitchen creating snow with the flour. I hadn't slept more than 3 consecutive hours, my presentation was nowhere near complete, and Hayden's texts had become increasingly sporadic as he immersed himself in business meetings. That morning, my boss Margaret requested an emergency video call to discuss the Westford project. I set the twins up with a puzzle, breaking my screen time rule out of desperation, and locked myself in Dad's office for the call. "I'll be frank, Ellie," Margaret said, her image pixelating slightly on my screen. "The team is concerned about your absence. Davis is suggesting he should take over the presentation." Davis was my main competition for the upcoming promotion. The thought of him swooping in on my project made my stomach clench. "That's not necessary," I assured her. "I've got everything under control." At that precise moment, a wail erupted from the living room. followed by the unmistakable sound of something large and possibly expensive crashing to the floor. Margaret's eyebrows rose. What was that? Construction next door, I lied smoothly. Very annoying, but it can't be helped. I muted my microphone and dashed to the living room to find the bookshelf tipped precariously, books scattered across the floor, and both twins crying. Lucas had a small cut on his forehead that was bleeding dramatically, as head wounds tend to do. I'm going to need to call you back, I told Margaret, trying to keep the panic from my voice. We're scheduled to review the final draft tomorrow, she reminded me. No extensions. After ending the call, I spent the next hour calming the twins, cleaning Lucas's minor wound, and restoring order to the living room. By the time I returned to my laptop, I had 17 new emails from work, each more urgent than the last. That afternoon, disaster struck in stereo. Lily developed a fever, flushed and listless on the couch, while Lucas started vomiting with impressive projectile force. I called the pediatrician number from Hayden's list, only to discover the twins hadn't been patients there for over a year. You might want to try Dr. Wilson's office, the receptionist suggested. I believe they transferred there when their parents separated. After finally reaching the correct doctor's office and describing the symptoms, the nurse advised me to bring them in immediately. Getting 2 sick toddlers dressed, into car seats, and to a doctor's office across town ranks among the most challenging operations I've ever coordinated. Dr. Wilson examined them with practiced efficiency. Looks like a stomach virus that's been going around, she concluded. Nothing serious, but they'll be miserable for a day or two. Plenty of fluids, rest, and monitor their temperatures. As she updated their charts, she glanced at me curiously. You're not Cassandra. I'm Ellie, Hayden's sister. I'm watching the twins while he's away. I see. Her tone suggested she saw more than I was saying. Normally Cassandra brings them in. They have a very consistent care schedule. On the drive home, with 2 drowsy, sick children in the back seat, I tried calling Hayden for the 5th time that day. Straight to voicemail again. Hayden, the twins are sick. Some stomach virus. Call me back ASAP. Back at the house, I set up a makeshift sick bay in the living room with blankets, pillows, and easy access to the bathroom. As I wiped Lily's forehead with a cool cloth, she looked up at me with feverish eyes. Want mommy, she whimpered. Lucas, curled up in his dinosaur blanket, echoed the sentiment. Where's mommy? Their plaintive requests broke something in me. I retreated to the kitchen on the pretext of getting more juice and found myself sliding down against the refrigerator, tears streaming down my face. In that moment of weakness, I noticed a photo album on the bottom shelf of the bookcase. Pulling it out, I found family pictures from before Mom died, before Hayden married Cassandra, before Dad met Judith. Images of a family that functioned, however imperfectly. There was 13-year-old me at a softball game, Dad's arm around my shoulders despite having been ejected by the umpire. Hayden at his high school graduation, Mom straightening his cap with pride shining in her eyes. Christmas mornings, summer vacations, ordinary moments preserved in glossy 4x6 prints. Toward the back were newer additions, Hayden and Cassandra's wedding, the twins as newborns, first birthdays. In every picture with the children, Cassandra looked attentive and loving. Hayden, when present, often appeared distracted, checking his phone or looking away from the camera. A text notification interrupted my nostalgic journey. Not from Hayden but from Dad. How are things going, princess? Paris is magnificent. Judith says hi. I didn't respond. Instead, I returned to the living room where the twins had fallen into restless sleep, their flushed cheeks and labored breathing tugging at my heart. Mommy, Lucas murmured in his sleep, clutching his stuffed elephant tighter. Something inside me hardened with resolve. This situation was untenable. My brother and father had dumped these children on me without adequate preparation, information, or support. The twins were suffering, my career was in jeopardy, and most concerning, they clearly missed their mother. Cassandra, who according to Mrs. Patterson and Dr. Wilson, seemed to be a devoted and consistent parent, not the flighty, irresponsible woman Hayden had described. I gently brushed Lily's damp hair from her forehead. Don't worry, sweetie, I whispered. I'm going to fix this. The next morning brought marginal improvements. Lily's fever had broken, and Lucas had stopped vomiting, though both remained listless and clingy. Between administering children's Tylenol and changing sweat-soaked pajamas, I embarked on what could only be described as detective work. Finding Cassandra proved surprisingly challenging. Hayden had deleted her contact information from the shared family address book, and my father claimed not to have her number since the separation troubles began. My requests to Hayden for her contact information were met with deflection or outright ignored. Eventually, I found a school form in the twins' backpack listing both parents' information. With trembling fingers, I dialed Cassandra's number, unsure what I would say. "Hello." Her voice was cautious, clearly not recognizing my number. "Cassandra? This is Ellie Brooks, Hayden's sister." A pause. "Is everything okay with the twins?" The genuine concern in her voice reinforced my growing suspicions. "They've been sick with a stomach bug, but they're improving. That's part of why I'm calling." "Sick? Poor things. Lily always gets hit harder than Lucas with these viruses." Another pause. "Wait, why do you have them? Is Hayden okay?" The moment of truth had arrived. "You don't know, do you? Hayden's in Europe, on a business trip. Dad and Judith are there too, on vacation. I've been watching Lily and Lucas for the past 4 days." The silence that followed was deafening. "Cassandra, he took them to Europe?" Her voice had dropped to a whisper. "Without telling me? Without my consent?" No, the twins are here with me in Seattle. Hayden went to Europe. He told me you knew they'd be staying with him this month." "They were supposed to be with him, yes. At his house, where I could visit them and check on them. Not with a relative they barely know, no offense." "None taken," I assured her. "I barely know them myself." What followed was a conversation that completely upended my understanding of my brother's marriage and separation. According to Cassandra, their marriage had begun deteriorating when Hayden's work hours became increasingly demanding, leaving her to handle the twins' care almost entirely alone. The final straw came when he missed Lucas's surgery for a tonsillectomy because of a business meeting. "We agreed to a trial separation 6 months ago," she explained. "I have primary custody, but Hayden takes them 1 weekend a month and for 1 full month during the summer. July was supposed to be his month, but if I'd known he was planning to leave the country and dump them with someone else, I never would have agreed." "He made it sound like you left suddenly, that you were being unreasonable," I admitted. Cassandra's bitter laugh held no humor. "Classic Hayden. He's never been able to accept responsibility for his part in our problems. It's always someone else's fault." The more we talked, the clearer the picture became. Hayden had manipulated not just me, but the entire situation, using the twins as pawns in his personal chess game with Cassandra. "Would you like to see them?" I asked impulsively. "They've been asking for you, especially while they were sick." "I'd love to," but she hesitated. "Our custody agreement has very specific terms. If I just show up and take them." That prompted my next step, consulting a family law attorney. I found one who could see me that afternoon and arranged for Mrs. Patterson to watch the twins for 2 hours. The attorney, Naomi Jensen, listened carefully to my explanation of the situation. "Let me make sure I understand," she said, flipping through the notes she'd taken. "Your brother has custody of his children for the month of July. Without informing their mother, he left the country and left the children with you. The mother was unaware of this arrangement." "That's correct." "And you have no legal relationship to these children beyond being their aunt?" "Right." She leaned back in her chair. "Ms. Brooks, what your brother has done potentially violates the terms of their custody agreement. Most agreements include clauses about right of first refusal, meaning if one parent can't care for the children during their designated time, the other parent has the right to take them back before any third party is involved." "So Cassandra should have been offered the chance to take the twins when Hayden decided to go to Europe?" "Precisely." Additionally, many custody agreements include restrictions on taking children out of state or country without the other parent's knowledge and consent. By planning to take them to Europe without informing their mother, he was potentially violating another clause. "What should I do?" I asked, the weight of responsibility feeling heavier than ever. Legally speaking, the children should be returned to their mother immediately. You have no legal standing to keep them. However, she added, seeing my expression, I understand family dynamics are complicated. Would you like me to help mediate a conversation between all parties? I thought about the twins asking for their mother, about Hayden's dismissive texts, about my father's expectation that I would simply handle everything while they enjoyed Europe. No, I said firmly. I know what I need to do. That evening, I packed up the twins' belongings, loaded everything into my rental car, and prepared for the confrontation that would inevitably follow. I wrote a detailed email to both Hayden and my father, explaining exactly what I was doing and why. The twins will be with their mother by the time you read this, I concluded. I suggest you finish your business in Europe and prepare to have some difficult conversations when you return. As I helped Lily and Lucas into their car seats, they seemed confused but excited. Where are we going? Lucas asked, clutching his dinosaur. To see Mommy, I told him, watching his face light up. Mommy. Lily clapped her hands, looking more animated than she had in days. With the navigation set to Cassandra's address, I pulled out of my father's driveway, leaving behind the role they had thrust upon me and embracing the one I had chosen, advocate for two children who deserved better than being used as pawns in adult games. The reunion between Cassandra and the twins was everything I hoped it would be. When she opened her front door and saw them, her face transformed with such joy that any lingering doubts I might have had evaporated instantly. My babies, she cried, dropping to her knees as they launched themselves into her arms. Mommy, I was sick, Lily informed her solemnly. And Ellie made dinosaur soup, Lucas added, referring to the chicken noodle soup I'd shaped into crude dinosaur formations to entice him to eat. Cassandra looked up at me over their heads, her eyes brimming with gratitude. Thank you, she mouthed silently. Inside her home, a modest but warm two-bedroom apartment, I saw evidence of a mother who prioritized her children in every way. Artwork decorated the refrigerator, educational toys were organized in colorful bins, and photos of the twins dominated every surface. In the corner of the living room stood a small desk with textbooks and a laptop. Cassandra was taking online courses in early childhood education while raising the twins. I can't believe Hayden did this, she said once the twins were settled with a snack. Actually, I can believe it, which is even worse. I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. He's always been selfish, but this crossed a line. Using me was bad enough, but using the kids as pawns in whatever game he's playing with you is unforgivable. I've tried so hard to make our co-parenting work, Cassandra sighed. I never speak badly about him to the twins. I encourage their relationship with him. But he makes it so difficult when he pulls stunts like this. My phone, which I'd silenced upon arrival, buzzed with multiple notifications. I checked the screen to find 3 missed calls from Hayden, 5 from Dad, and a series of increasingly frantic texts. I think they've seen my email, I said dryly. As if on cue, my phone lit up with Hayden's name. After a moment's hesitation, I answered and put it on speaker. What the hell, Ellie? Hayden's voice was tight with fury. Where are my kids? With their mother, I replied calmly. Where they should have been the moment you decided to leave the country. You had no right. No, Hayden, you had no right, I interrupted. No right to manipulate me into flying across the country under false pretenses. No right to abandon your children with someone they barely know. And absolutely no right to keep their mother in the dark about your plans. Put Cassandra on the phone. Now. His voice had dropped to a dangerous register I'd rarely heard. Cassandra took a deep breath and leaned toward the phone. I'm here, Hayden. What did you do? Convince my sister to betray me. I didn't have to convince her of anything. She called me because the twins were sick and asking for me. Something you would have known if you'd bothered to return her calls. This is a violation of our custody agreement, he threatened. Actually, I interjected, I spoke with a family lawyer today. You violated the agreement the moment you left the country without informing Cassandra and delegated your parental responsibilities to a third party without offering her right of first refusal. A heavy silence followed this revelation. You went to a lawyer? Hayden finally asked, his voice smaller. I needed to understand the legal implications before making any decisions, I explained. Turns out, you didn't just manipulate me emotionally, you potentially violated legal boundaries as well. I'll fight this, he declared, but the uncertainty in his voice betrayed him. Or, Cassandra suggested, you could finish your business trip, and when you get back, we can discuss a more reasonable co-parenting plan with clearer boundaries. One that prioritizes the twins' well-being over your convenience. Before Hayden could respond, another call beeped through. Dad. That's Dad calling, I told Hayden. I should probably take it. This isn't over, my brother warned before hanging up. The conversation with Dad followed a similar pattern, though with more emotional manipulation thrown in. I can't believe you would do this to your brother, he said, disappointment heavy in his voice. After everything our family has been through, what would your mother think? Mom would be appalled at how you and Hayden treated those children, I countered. She would have driven them to Cassandra herself. Dad's strategy shifted from disappointment to anger, then to bargaining, and finally to a reluctant acceptance when I remained unmoved. Fine, he conceded eventually. But you're still coming to Sunday dinner when we get back. We need to discuss this as a family. I'll think about it, I replied, unwilling to make promises I might not keep. After ending the call, I found Cassandra watching me with a mixture of admiration and concern. Your family is intense, she observed. You have no idea. Though I guess you do, being married to Hayden. She smiled wryly. I loved him once. Still do, in some ways. But loving someone doesn't mean accepting how they treat you or your children. We spent the rest of the evening getting to know each other properly while the twins, energized by their mother's presence, showed me all their favorite toys and books. For the first time since arriving in Seattle, I felt the tension in my shoulders begin to ease. When it came time for me to leave, Lucas wrapped his arms around my legs in a surprisingly strong grip. Don't go, Aunt Ellie, he pleaded. I'll see you again soon, I promised, surprised by how much I meant it. But right now, you get to stay with Mommy, and I need to go back to Grandpa's house to get my things. Cassandra walked me to the door. Thank you, she said again. Not just for bringing them to me, but for standing up to your family. I know how hard that can be. It was overdue, I admitted. For all of us. As I drove back to my father's empty house, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years when dealing with my family, pride in my decisions, and the certainty that I had done the right thing, regardless of the personal cost. The final days of my unplanned Seattle visit took on a different character than I could have imagined. Rather than struggling with childcare, I found myself spending time with Cassandra and the twins by choice, not obligation. We took them to the park, visited the aquarium, and even had a dinosaur day dedicated to Lucas's obsession, complete with a trip to the Natural History Museum. Watching Cassandra with her children revealed what a truly dedicated mother looked like. She anticipated their needs while still encouraging independence, set boundaries with consistency and warmth, and treated each twin as an individual despite their identical appearance. It was educational and humbling. You're really good at this, I told her as we watched the twins feeding ducks at a local pond. I've had 3 years of practice, she replied with a smile. And I'm still figuring it out every day. No one gives you a manual. Hayden certainly didn't leave me one, I agreed, thinking of his coffee-stained, scribbled notes. Cassandra's expression grew serious. Can I ask you something? About Hayden? Of course. Was he always like this? So focused on himself that he couldn't see how his actions affected others. I considered the question carefully. Not always, but the tendency was there. Our mom was the one who kept him in check, reminded him to consider other perspectives. After she died, I trailed off, remembering how our family dynamic had shifted. Dad never called him on his self-centeredness the way Mom did. If anything, he encouraged it. My phone had remained relatively quiet since the initial confrontation. Hayden had sent a few terse updates about his business meetings, while Dad and Judith shared touristy photos from Paris, as if nothing unusual had happened. The emotional distance felt liberating. Then, 5 days after I'd brought the twins to Cassandra, Hayden called again. This time, his tone was different. I've been thinking, he began without preamble. About what you said. About using the kids as pawns. And he sighed heavily. You might have been right. I was so focused on making this deal work, on proving to Cassandra I could provide financially, that I didn't consider what the twins needed emotionally. Which was stability, and their mother, I supplied. Yeah, he admitted reluctantly. I've spoken with Cassandra. We're going to revise our custody agreement when I get back. More specific terms about travel and childcare arrangements. That sounds like a good start. There was a pause before he added, I'm sorry, Ellie, for putting you in that position. It wasn't fair. The apology, while imperfect, was more than I'd expected from my brother. No, it wasn't. But I'm glad something positive has come from it. 2 days later, my father surprised me by cutting his trip short and returning to Seattle without Judith, who continued to Italy with friends. We need to talk, he announced, appearing on Cassandra's doorstep, where I was helping the twins make Play-Doh dinosaurs. Cassandra graciously gave us privacy, taking the children to their bedroom for quiet time. We sat across from each other at her small dining table, the distance between us feeling both physical and emotional. I owe you an apology, Dad began, the words clearly difficult for him. I shouldn't have manipulated you into coming home under false pretenses. No, you shouldn't have, I agreed, unwilling to make this easier for him. After your mother died, I lost my moral compass in many ways, he continued, surprising me with his candor. She was always the one who knew the right thing to do. Without her. He shook his head. I defaulted to whatever seemed most expedient, not what was right. That's not an excuse, Dad. No, it's not. It's an explanation, not a justification. He looked around Cassandra's apartment, taking in the evidence of her dedicated parenting. I was wrong about her too. Hayden painted a very different picture. And you believed him without question because he's your son. Dad nodded slowly. I've always favored him, haven't I? Even when you were kids. The admission stunned me into momentary silence. Never had I expected my father to acknowledge the dynamic that had defined my childhood. Yes, I finally said. You have. Your mother used to call me on it. After she was gone, there was no one to keep me honest. He reached across the table, tentatively offering his hand. I'd like to do better, Ellie, if you'll give me the chance. I looked at his outstretched hand, thinking about patterns and choices and the possibility of change. After a moment, I placed my hand in his. I'd like that too, Dad. The remainder of my time in Seattle became an unexpected opportunity for healing and reconnection. I extended my stay by another week, rescheduling my return to Chicago after an honest conversation with Margaret about my family situation. To my surprise, she was understanding and arranged for me to present to the client virtually, with support from the local team. Family comes first, she said. Just don't make a habit of it. The presentation went better than I could have hoped. Davis attempted to undermine my points several times, but my thorough preparation and confidence won over the client. The following week, I received news that I'd secured both the account and the promotion I'd been working toward. As for the twins, they adjusted quickly to the new arrangement. Hayden returned from Europe with a business deal secured and a newfound awareness of his parental responsibilities. While his relationship with Cassandra remained complex, they began the difficult work of creating a healthier co-parenting dynamic. During my final evening in Seattle, we gathered for dinner at a neutral restaurant, myself, Dad, Hayden, Cassandra, and the twins. The conversation was sometimes awkward, occasionally tense, but ultimately productive. For perhaps the first time since my mother's death, we spoke honestly about expectations, boundaries, and moving forward as a reconfigured family. Will you come back soon, Aunt Ellie? Lily asked as we said our goodbyes, her small hand clasped in mine. I promise, I told her, realizing how much I would miss these children I had initially resented caring for. And maybe you can visit me in Chicago someday. Lucas looked up from the dinosaur toy he'd been focused on. Do they have dinosaurs in Chicago? The biggest dinosaur skeleton in the world, I told him, smiling at his widened eyes. As I packed my suitcase that night, I found the dinosaur diaper bag Hayden had thrust into my hands at the airport. Was it really only 2 weeks ago? I ran my fingers over the cartoonish prints, reflecting on how a single moment can alter the course of your life in unexpected ways. My phone chimed with a text from Caitlin. Ready for your triumphant return to civilization tomorrow? I smiled as I replied, yes, but it's not the escape I expected. More like a return with purpose. The next morning, Dad drove me to the airport. As we approached the departure terminal, he turned to me with an expression I hadn't seen since childhood, one of genuine pride. You did what your mother would have done, he said simply. You saw what was right, and you did it, regardless of the cost to yourself. I had a good example once, I replied, thinking of Mom and her unwavering moral compass. Your promotion, that's a big deal, princess. I didn't say that enough before. I'm proud of you. The old nickname didn't grate as it once had. Perhaps because this time, it was accompanied by recognition of my adult accomplishments, not just familial obligation. As I navigated security and found my gate, I reflected on the unexpected journey of the past 2 weeks. I had arrived in Seattle dreading a family reconnection that turned out to be a childcare ambush. I was leaving having reconnected with my family in ways deeper and more authentic than anything my father or brother had originally planned. Sometimes, I realized, the strongest family connections come not from obligation or manipulation, but from honesty, boundaries, and the courage to stand up for what's right, even when those you love are in the wrong. What lessons have you learned about family obligations and setting boundaries? Have you ever been put in a situation where doing the right thing meant going against family expectations? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more stories like this one, and share with someone who might need encouragement to stand up for what's right in their own family dynamics. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, true family support means wanting what's best for each other, not what's most convenient.